Yep, we're back at it again with more Toronto Maple Leafs trade talk, and this time, it's not me going out there and just kind of spitting off the top of the dome again. Instead, we are heading over onto an article published on thescore.ca. Or .com, excuse me, because Josh Wegman, a few weeks ago, went out there and published this piece asking a very simple question. Who says no? Here are 7 hypothetical off-season trades. Now, of course, this is not really something that is too substantial, it's just an idea. Talking about some stuff, talking about some players, talking about some teams. What the folks over at The Score did was they went over with 4 of their news editors, Kyle Cushman, Kayla Douglas, Sean O'Leary, and myself, aka Josh Wegman, the writer, and they talked about some of the trades wherein the other members of the crew would ask, hey, who says no? Both teams, one team, or if it's a good deal. The trade we are talking about today is the first one on the piece. The link is going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and read this yourself. Also, there are some other trade ideas, of course, tossed around in there. The Leafs and Rangers could pull off a blockbuster. The Rangers would receive William Nylander with a 7-year by $9.5 million extension, Timothy Liljegren, Calle Jarnkrok, and Pontus Holmberg in exchange for FILIP CHYTIL, KAAPO KAKKO, Braden Schneider, and Barclay Goodrow at 20% retained. Each of the Score crew went out there and said that the Maple Leafs would say no. And before we go out there and read what the article has to say in regards to this, let's just go over the profile here. William Nylander, if he gets a 7-year by $9.5 million extension, that's a pretty good deal, I think. He is a very talented player, as we had said, 87 points, 82 games played, 40-goal year. He's been a 30-goal guy for a good chunk of his career here. He has just been spectacular, and the playoff consistency definitely adds to his value as well. But with the Toronto Maple Leafs also trading away Liljegren, Jarnkrok, and Holmberg, these are all pretty valuable assets. Timothy Liljegren, young right-handed defenseman, he was a top pick in 2017, and he finally broke out on Toronto the past few years as a full-time guy. Now sure, he doesn't produce a heck of a lot of points, but what Liljegren does is play such a stable and defensively sound game that he allows the rest of the players on the ice at the time to just breathe, to just play the game smoother, because Liljegren is just so collected and able in his own zone, in the neutral zone, when defending the rush. He is such a good defensive defenseman that I think you're sort of undervaluing him if you're just adding him as a throw-in to any sort of a Nylander trade. Add in Jarnkrok and Holmberg, 2 guys that actually do have some pretty okay value too. Jarnkrok more of a bottom to middle 6 depth forward option, and of course you have Holmberg who fits into that mold as well. Jarnkrok produced a pretty good amount of points last year, and Holmberg definitely had his chops in the NHL after being a pretty good Marley the past little while too. If the New York Rangers are able to get all this stuff, imagine just the boost that would add to their team. You don't need to re-sign Tyler Mott, you've got Jarnkrok and Holmberg to add on those assets. Nylander adds an entirely other level of top-tier point production to your top 6, and Liljegren stabilizes your back end pretty well. If you talk about the guys the Maple Leafs are receiving here, CHYTIL, KAKKO, Schneider, Barclay, Goodrow, sure, you could say Goodrow balances out the loss of Jarnkrok and Holmberg in the bottom there. You could say that CHYTIL and KAKKO themselves are worth a William Nylander. You could say that Braden Schneider is in a similar tier as Timothy Liljegren. But when it comes to just a lot of the growth and potential that these New York Rangers have exhibited, it's not necessarily there to the same extent. I do think that Braden Schneider has a lot more to show off of at the NHL level, but Liljegren's a better defenseman right now. I do think that KAAPO KAKKO can become a good player. We made a video a week ago talking about him and Jack Hughes, and how Hughes is now a 100-point scorer, and KAKKO is still on his way up. While I do think KAKKO can become great, William Nylander by himself is just that gosh darn good. And so, when all 3 of the Score writers go out there and say that the Maple Leafs say no to this trade, it makes sense to me. Now, let's go out there and actually read what the article has to say. Here's what Wegman writes about as to why it could work. Latest reports indicate there is a sizable gap between the Leafs and Nylander in extension discussions. If talks completely fall apart, the Leafs might be better off trading Nylander, who can become a free agent in 2024, rather than losing a core piece for nothing. Nylander may be more open to extending with the Rangers, one of his father's former teams. He is undoubtedly the best player in the deal, but FILIP CHYTIL, who is just 23 and locked up for 4 more years at $4.4 annually, would allow John Tavares to move to the wing, where he's likely best suited at this point in his career. Kakko's career got off to a slow start, but the second overall pick is coming off his best year and still has room to grow. The article then says that Braden Schneider brings more top 4 upside than Liljegren, which I don't necessarily agree nor disagree with, mostly because I think it's a difference in style. Braden Schneider has an offensive touch that I think Liljegren does not have, but I do think that Liljegren is a lot more stable defensively. But either way, the article says that Schneider could be a long-term partner for Morgan Rielly, Gaudreau and Yarncrow would be swapped at near identical cap hits with the salary retention. However, what this article also talks about is why it might not work. Nylander is a rare game-breaking talent who's arguably been the best postseason performer of Toronto's core 4, and our voters think there's not enough value in return. If this is the best offer at new GM Brad Treliving's disposal, he might use the season to keep working on a Nylander extension and even be prepared to use him as his own rental if a deal can't get done. And that's sort of the thing as well. Because Nylander is so game-changingly, game-breakingly good, you have to make sure you're winning whatever trade it is you can get if you send him away. You cannot send him away for maybes. Chytil and Kakko and Braden Schneider, these guys are good and they're gonna probably get better, but they're still young and they haven't reached their highs yet. Nylander is already there. He's already a top-of-the-line point producer, and he's already by far the best player in this hypothetical trade. Should the Rangers get something of a Nylander in their top 6 and have him go along with Zibanejad, Panarin, Kreider, Trocheck, and even Blake Wheeler for crying out loud, the Rangers might have themselves a ticket to the 3rd round once again. They get the better players in this deal, and they keep in with their timeline of trying to build for the now. Toronto, on the other hand, is getting a bit younger, and they're getting a little bit less secure, I feel, with the quality of the product on the ice right now. And while I do understand the perspective of saying that Braden Schneider is going to be better than Liljegren, it took Liljegren so long, it took this guy years to hone his craft in the AHL to become the defensive defenseman he is today. Braden Schneider does not have that same quality, I feel, in his game right now, and even though you have growth at your disposal, the Maple Leafs at this point in time cannot afford to take their foot off the gas pedal. They just need to keep on working and keep on trying to push. So, when it comes to this hypothetical trade idea, I don't like it per se for Toronto. I think the Rangers would be making out like bandits here. I think it's a really good deal for them, especially if they get Nylander to that contract. I mean, Panarin Nylander together, that sounds great. Even if you replace the KAAPO KAKKO minutes with William Nylander, right there, there's a fit in your lineup. You could say the KAAPO KAKKO could play with Matthews and there could be this nice little camaraderie there of top picks, and then you could move Tavares to the wing and things could be good there, but too much would need to go right for this to make sense. Meanwhile, for New York, it's a lot more just, hey, plug and play. Here's Nylander, just throw him in there and he's gonna be good. For Toronto, you have to make sure you play your cards right, and because there is so much insecurity there, it's a no from me. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this trade idea? Am I really undervaluing the Rangers guys here? Like, I know this happens sometimes when we bring up hypothetical trade ideas, but I would not be surprised if there were some Rangers fans in the comments saying, oh yeah, we're getting Nylander and Yarncrow and Holmberg and Liljegren for that? No, wait, that's too much. We're not giving up on Braden Schneider, we're not giving up on Kakko, all these other guys. I'm sure there will be some comments in the comments section arguing that the Rangers are actually getting fleeced here. But in my biased perspective, I don't really think that's the case. I think this is a New York win. So if you're a fan of the Rangers, if you're a fan of the Leafs, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this hypothetical trade from the Score? Nylander with a $7.9 million extension, Timothy Liljegren, Yarncrow, and Holmberg in exchange for Chytil, KAAPO KAKKO, Braden Schneider, and Gaudreau at 20% retained. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.